Hello, and how are you? Hujambo mpenzi mtazamaji na mpenzi msikilizaji. This is the Wellness Lab with I, Daniel Nganga, and Vee Kimani. But in the meantime, a brief introduction of the Wellness Lab. We say, at the Wellness Lab, we nurture your mind and change your life. Why? It's been a long time. We say, maisha ni yangu, shughulika na yako. We want to change the narrative because your life matters and mine matters, and no one is an island. And so we learn together, we work together, we win together. I want to allow our guest today to introduce herself, and her introduction will be a bit extensive, at least to tujue who Vee Kimani is, ama who Vee Motivation is. Vee, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Vee Kimani is a wellness coach and a life mentor, and blends so well with the young people
Like me.
like you, and an upcoming advocate of the boy child
Great.
like you again.
Like me.
Like you, yes. So in the life mentorship and the life coaching, we help you. We help someone to help themselves, like to understand what they are going through in their lives and to navigate through, so that they can come the other side a better person. Yeah.
Perfect. And today we are talking about, we call it an epidemic because it's affecting so many lives. And we are calling it a disease called childhood traumas. And just before then, Vee, according to UNICEF, approximately 1 in 4 children globally experience abuse or neglect. And in East Africa, 1 out of 5 children have faced severe violence, that is including physical abuse and neglect. Now, in Kenya, according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, says 30% of kids in Kenya suffer abuse or neglect. And I think that is where trauma starts. And the Kenya Mental Health Policy says that child trauma often extends to adulthood. And this can harm mental health and social behavior. I want us to start here. Please introduce to us what childhood traumas are or is.
So when we talk about the childhood traumas, allow me to first do the trauma.
Yes, please.
So traumas are actually life-threatening experiences, and they can happen at any age. So they can happen when you're a child. They can happen at your youthfulness.
Yes.
Even at the middle age, even at the old age. Above 50, you can still get traumatized. Right. So anything that is life-threatening, it can come in form of an assault or violence, and it affects you, and especially emotionally and mentally. That is what we rate as trauma.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to childhood trauma is the experiences, the life-threatening experiences that anyone can go through at 18 years or below 18 years. They come in very many sizes and very many shapes. Yeah, depending on the person, who is depending on the incidents that happened, that left the person traumatized. Yeah.
This program is coming to you live, Prestige TV on Facebook and YouTube. It's coming again to you live on Vee Motivation on Facebook and YouTube. And it's coming live to you at Daniel Nganga on Facebook and YouTube. You have no reason to miss out on this because it is a live learning experience. Now, Vee, we talk of it comes in different shapes and sizes. Now, let's start with shapes.
In terms of shapes, it can happen. That is the magnitude.
Okay.
So when we are rating childhood traumas in terms of magnitude, we don't have the severity. We don't talk of the severity or the mild. So in fact, we categorize it according to the need for care. So the need for care and the need for intervention. So we talk of 3 categories. So we talk of the number 1, which is the acute trauma. And for the acute trauma, this is a simple or a single trauma, and it means that mtu alipitia only once.
Okay.
Whatever you went through, maybe for example, a rape case, and she was raped once. If it is an accident that a person witnessed, it only happened once. That is what we call an acute trauma. We also have chronic traumas, and chronic here will say multiple. So there are many. You have witnessed many. If it is a rape, you are raped several times. If it is the accidents or the disasters, you have seen many of them happening, and maybe they left a scar or a mark in you, okay? And then lastly, we have what we call the vicarious trauma.
That is the physical mark.
Yeah, that is the physical mark. We also physical and an emotional mark, yes. Okay. And then we have what we call the vicarious trauma. This is a second-hand type of trauma. So this one means that you were not involved directly, but you witnessed. Maybe you saw your friend going through it, or there was a scene. For example, we had things to do like the corona period, where maybe you witnessed people losing their lives in the corona, or you witnessed an accident happening and people were losing their lives there, and you tend to empathize with them to an extent that it really affects you. So that one, we call it the vicarious trauma. Yeah, so there are three of them.
Right. And so you've mentioned on the causes of traumas and the examples.
Yeah.
Now, when this happens, Vee, and let's start from the childhood, because sometimes what starts at childhood is what affects most of us in adulthood.
Yeah.
Now, how does this show in adulthood?
So to start with the child,
yes,
actually, even children go through stress. So stress is not only for adults. Even children will go through stress. Okay. Sometimes the stress
for children.
is positive. Yeah, for the child. We're talking about the child.
Yes.
So sometimes it will be positive stress, meaning that whatever they are going through, they can be able to handle and convert that energy into a positive way without really having to affect them. And then sometimes it can be a negative stress.
Yes.
So this is the one that will leave the mark. And this is what we are calling the trauma now. So even kids, a lot of children will go through stress, but they go through stress silently because even for them, they don't know what is the meaning of stress. Yeah, so kids will experience trauma in different ways. For example, we have an assault, a physical assault. For example, mtoto kutandikwa sana.
What you said earlier, as you were starting at least 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 5.
It happens.
30% of them it happens.
Correct.
Okay.
And then it can come in form of an abuse, like a sexual abuse. And the records have it like in the whole world. At least out of 3 children, 1 child might have gone might have gone through a sexual abuse.
1 out of 3
in the whole world, and they are just silent. And this one comes directly and indirectly, such that maybe the child was sexually abused herself or himself, or the child witnessed. For example, they witnessed an adult engaging in sexual behaviors. So that witnessing affected them, and it left a trauma inside them. So they were affected in a negative, indirectly.
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from that, they can also experience violence. Again, violence will come in 2 ways. This is where the child was violated herself or himself, or the child witnesses like a domestic violence at home. Yeah, so that one can also be very traumatizing to the child. Also, bullying is also another way that can cause a lot of trauma to the children and affect them during that time. But during that time, they will not say anything. They are going to remain so quiet. But much later, as they are growing up, and especially when they reach to their teenage, it starts to affect them, and it will start affecting them unknowingly.
Yes.
Yeah. So
does it have to be spoken for it to be realized that one suffered some trauma sometimes in their life, or that comes naturally? You will tell someone suffered.
So there are those ones that you can be able, there are those ones who are able to open up and talk about it, but there are others who will not even have an idea that they were affected. Whatever, how they are acting right now, it is a result of what happened maybe in their childhood. So for some will be going through it, but they have no idea what is really happening to them.
Right.
And then there are others who, they know the trauma, they know they are traumatized, but they will never talk. But we usually observe observe the behavior of a person. Every time a person is traumatized, they will have to behavior changes. Even the personality, they might have personality disorders, or you can observe their behavior changes. For example, this person will tend to isolate themselves so much. They don't want to mix with people. They really don't want to associate with people. They want to spend most of their time all alone. Anataka kukaa peke yake.
Yeye tu na maisha.
Yeye tu na
And that
maisha
is not, and that is putting aside the personality. I'm an introverted person. It's something way beyond the personality.
Yeah, because
Right.
according to them, this is a coping mechanism. Okay, what happens when trauma comes at childhood? In most cases, because we have said, pale akiwa mtoto haezi ongea. Wengi wao wanapitia, but they are doing it silently because kids will not know how to say it. So they will just keep quiet. So as they are growing up, it means that this thing was not dwelt with pale kitambo. Na ataendelea kunyamaza mpaka they are when they become adults, isn't it? So atanyamaza, anapitia ndani yake. So we call this inner struggle. The person is going through a lot of inner struggle inside, and they don't want to speak about it. So what will be happening? They are going to develop what we call the coping mechanisms or the defense mechanisms. So people tend to develop different mechanisms, they react to situations differently. So there is one who will be so isolated, anataka akae peke yake. There are others who are going to be addicted to something.
Probably, if I may ask, and let's go with the generational thing.
Yeah.
For example, the parents who are between 80, between 70s upwards,
Okay.
the children that they gave birth to, I think they grew up in environment. Yeah, it's tough. Mainly you do something, coffee. And those parents, I don't think we've seen some things like traumas that come from their childhood according to the how they were being brought up. Maybe the parenting styles. Now, come to the generations that we have today.
Yeah.
Today we have parents. We use the very now famous terms that are being used today. The millennial parents today are parenting the Gen Zs, right? No, the parenting styles, does it have to do with something, or does it have something to do with causing traumas or dealing with traumas or affecting children emotionally and sometimes even mentally?
Yeah, it has to. But like you have said about time,
Yes.
initially, trauma has not come right now. Initially, even trauma used to exist. Even during those time of the grandparents, it was still there. But now, there was no that awareness for a person to know whether they are traumatized or not traumatized. And then during that time, whatever they were going through, they just had to go through it very silently.
Yes.
And they had nowhere to go and speak out. Even the things like guidance and counseling were not there.
Okay.
So they hapo wanatoa sasa the mechanisms zenye nimekuambia, they are called the coping mechanisms. Yeye akae ajue venye ata survive na ajue venye ata grow nayo all the way. But as you come in, according to the generations, as you come in, you look at the generation where we are today, it's an informed generation.
Yes.
So we can be able to tell, be able to differentiate between stress and depression. We can be able to differentiate between a trauma and just a normal happening. We are much more informed. And there are also channels for you to speak out. Like you can go to the support groups and maybe, or the counseling departments, and maybe open up and tell them that you are going through 1, 2, or 3 things.
Take you back one step back.
Okay.
You talked about personality disorders caused by traumas.
Yeah.
Now, what do you mean by personality disorders?
So personality disorders in this case will mean that the type of a person you are, the person you are by nature.
Let's use me as an example.
Okay.
Maybe I'm phlegmatic.
Okay.
By nature, I'm an introvert. So how does trauma affect my personality?
Yeah.
In I distort kuwa who I'm not.
Yeah, it will. For example, in isolation, it may not come because you're used to being alone, isn't it? But it can come in form of addiction. You can get a mechanism where you're addicted to something. For example,
So because I take tea a lot, that means I'm addicted to
yeah,
tea.
it can come with food. Actually, the addictions can come in terms of food. So this person is trying to look for a soothing. You know why we have this mechanism, this coping mechanism? You are looking for something to soothe yourself. It's like you are either escaping from that something that is disturbing you. You are trying to escape, or you are soothing yourself and trying to seek for comfort within yourself. So some will go for food. So they will eat a lot, but they are not eating because they are really appetite.
But they're fighting up something.
Yeah, they're
They're trying
fighting
to
up
suppress
something.
the kitu na hapo.
Alafu sasa kuna wengine ni simu. They will always be on their phone. Always be on their phone. But kumbe there is something within them that is really disturbing them, and therefore hiyo simu inakuwa the soother. Hiyo inamsoothe during that time.
Does it help to heal?
It doesn't help to heal. It is just like an escapism to something.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're used to saying that time heals. Does time heal traumas? Because assuming I went through something at the age of 5. I went through something at the age of 10. Probably the same thing ikajirudia. Again, something happened around age 15. Okay? Then I went through something in boarding school, and that's something I went through. For example, I witnessed, or I was bullied, and I was forced to do things I'm not supposed to do. Now, these are recurrent issues. An issue after another. An issue after another. Now we say, time heals. Does time heal traumas? Because if I have gone through multiple traumatic issues, now I'm 30, I'm 40, and you're still telling me time heals. Does time really heal?
Time heals with acceptance. When it comes to traumas, acceptance first, and then time will tell.
How do you know, and how do you come to accept that you are traumatized for you to accept? Because if, for example, let me use myself, I take a lot of tea. Mi ukunywa chai. And maybe niko karibu kuitisha chai. And so, maybe I found myself taking tea. Probably something happened. I don't know. Okay?
When it comes to addiction,
Yeah.
you have to note one thing. Not everyone who is addicted to something is traumatized.
Now, first question. That is where you're coming from. Now, nitajua aje? Like,
That
niko na hiyo trauma. Nitajua aje?
So there are some characters that you're going to project that we can tell, or someone who is so close to you can tell. For example, we have anxiety. So people who are traumatized are usually so worried about everything. And then we have panic attacks. Panic attacks is where unaka ukishtuka. So akisikia kitu, for example, maybe they witnessed like an accident somewhere, like myself. There is a time I witnessed an accident, and every time ninasikia sauti pa, unaona mpaka ile ya motorbike zinafanya pa kwa barabara. Yani unconsciously, and those are what we are calling panic attacks. And then others will anger. They get angry easily and over nothing. And their anger, they will even exaggerate it for small things, but they are getting upset so quickly. So anger can be another one, after of isolation, after things like addictions, but it is an addiction in relation to trauma. Yeah, it is addiction in relation to trauma. We also have cases like low self-esteem. So people who are traumatized, in most cases, I have told you they have the inner struggle. They're struggling inside within them, and they always feel like this world is not enough for them. They are struggling to survive, and they feel like they were not meant to live, and they feel so limited in this world. So, in most cases, their esteem is always very low because they're even trying to find themselves. Some will even try to ask themselves, like, of what value are they to this world? Wako na umuhimu gani kwa hii dunia? So, anajaribu kujitafuta ndani yake. So in most cases, it will always lower their self-esteem. And they're so good in comparing themselves to others. And because inside them, wakati mwingi, the thoughts that are happening inside their minds are very negative thoughts. About themselves and about the world. Yeah. How they see the world and how they perceive the world is seeing them. So ninaona dunia aje. So for them, they will see it in a negative way. And then wanaona dunia inawaona aje. So they perceive that the world is seeing them in a very negative, in a negative way. So this one will always affect their self-esteem. And so in most cases, they will have very low self-esteem.
Yes.
And then most of them tend to lose their identity. They lose that self-identity, yeah? Hajitambui. And that is why people who are traumatized are so easy to be manipulated.
Okay.
They are so easy because they have no confidence within themselves. Hajitambui, if he was
they're riding on someone else's confidence.
So they are so easily manipulated, so easily. At places of work, they will be easily manipulated. And even at times, they will be, allow me to use the word, overused.
Overused in what sense?
At places...
Because we need to educate someone, probably who is going through something. Maybe they don't know. Hawajui wako traumatized. Wao, yule tu ni mtu akiambiwa, Vee, fagia hapa. Anafagia.
Yeah.
Vee, asha jiko. They don't know how to say no.
Yeah, they don't, you have put it well. They don't know how to say no. They're not good when it comes to setting their boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah, in most cases, because I've told you, their view of the world is quite different from a person who has never gone through any form of trauma. So for these ones, they don't know how to set boundaries. They don't know where to say yes and where to say no. So in most cases, they will always behave in a way that whatever the environment requires them, that is what they will give. They don't know where to put their boundaries, and they don't know. They are also very poor when it comes to making decisions. They are very poor in making decisions. And remember, it is because they are never confident about the decisions they make. They don't even understand why they are there in the first place. Ako tu alijikuta. And therefore, anything that has to be decided, it's better for the other person to decide for them. For them, they really struggle when it comes to making decisions. Yeah, so you know them by that. Another thing I've talked about, isolation. So why are they isolating themselves so much? They are very poor when it comes to interpersonal skills. Very poor when it comes to nurturing, building, or even making relationships. They are not so good in that. They are not confident about their relationship. And then I've told you they will have emotions. Watatoa emotions kama anger. You see, when you that kind of a person unakasirikanga kitu kidogo, people will tend to run away from you or to stay at a distance from you, isn't it? Then ukiwa yule mtu mwenye you're always on the phone, that means you have no time for people. So wewe kila wakati, when you're free ni simu. When you're free,
ukiongea hauna time for people. There are specific things maybe I would love you to set clear.
Okay.
Introverts. Let's first come to personality.
Okay.
And then we think of traumas making you to pull down or watu, sindio?
Yeah.
Now, for an introvert, naturally, let me give an example because I'm one of them.
Okay.
Mostly, if I'm not working, if I'm not in charge, if I'm not with family, and I'm using myself, maybe, I'm not traumatized. I think I'm sure about that.
Okay.
But by the time tunamaliza, itaniambia.
Okay.
So, if I'm not at church, I'm not working with people, I'm not, I'm not teaching, I'm not doing any kind of mentorship, you'll find me in these 4 things. Number 1, I'll be on my phone. Number 2, I'll be alone. Either please kumenyamaza kabisa. Probably, once in a while, when I feel niko chini, you'll find me listening to music. If you'll not find me there, you'll find me walking alone. And sometimes tutembea peke yao ujiongelesha kidogo. You might think tuko na shida lakini hatuna. In the place number 4, you'll find me. It is in something that makes me happy. For example, a place like this, hata nikiwa peke yangu, nature makes me happy. I'm alone and I'm enjoying it. Now, how do you distinguish the difference between this is a personality issue and this is a traumatic issue?
Mm-hmm. Very good. So you don't look at one symptom and you crown it all.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll not say that he likes being isolated and therefore he's traumatized. So you're going to look at also other symptoms like the ones that I have mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, so if this is the phone, why are they too much into the phone? Because there are people who enjoy their own company, and it is not because they are traumatized. That is what they like most, like you have said, yeah? So you don't look at one symptom, even for those ones who are angry. There are some people who are just angry.
Naturally, well,
traumatized. So you don't look at one thing and just judge.
Yes.
Yeah, you look at those several, one or two symptoms, so that you can be able, even from the way they talk. In most cases, people who are traumatized or were traumatized at their childhood, they are usually, I've told you, they are not good in making decisions. They don't know how to set their boundaries. So you're looking at all that. Plus, something else about these people, wenye walipitia trauma wakiwa watoto, when they grow up, in most cases, apart from the personality disorders that I have, they express pain. So they're usually carrying bitterness for something. And this is where I've told you they are not so good when it comes to relating with others.
Yes.
Because there is something they are holding back within them. Kuna kitu wanashika na wameshikilia huko ndani. And that is, hiyo sasa ndio inatoka in terms of the symptoms that we are talking about.
Yes.
So they will talk with pain. Kuna mse unaweza sikia akiongea, unasikia venye ameji express, hata unabaki na
unakakitu.
Unaona there is something that is questionable about that person.
Yes.
So pain, that bitterness, plus the ones that we have talked about now. Yeah, that one can sort of give you a hint whether the person is going through trauma or not.
No, Vee, come back to this. Tumesema then time heals. And maybe it heals a lot of things. And maybe traumas are part of what time heals. Asking myself this question as we are talking. If time heals, do some triggers again re-trigger the traumas? And if they do, what are these triggers?
Okay, before we go to the triggers, let me do the healing part.
Yes.
So when it comes to the healing part, I told you that it is you who have to accept the recovery. Recovery is a process. It will not take one day. Like you wake up in the morning and, oh, I'm healed, I'm not traumatized. It will not happen like that.
Yes.
So sometimes it will take long, depending on the intense, venye yule mtu alikuwa affected. Kama ilimhit sana. And for a long time, they have been carrying a lot of pain and bitterness in their hearts. Then for them, to some, depending on their personalities and depending with who they are, kuna wenye watahili so fast.
Yes.
Na kuna wengine watatake long. But we usually say, when it comes to trauma, as much as it can take long, it is possible to get healed. It is very possible for you. And the first thing, hapo ndio tumesema ya kwamba you need to accept. You need to accept such that hata hizi triggers zikikuja, because you are fully aware.
This is me.
This is me. And in the past, I had gone through this and this and this. And this is provoking the pains or the feelings or the emotions that I have been carrying because of the traumatic event that happened. So it will be easier for you to get through and even not to be hurt again. So the first thing, it is for you to get aware. Are you really traumatized? So even if I identify you, that maybe from the way you behave or the way you talk, ni suspect ya kwamba maybe you carry some maybe you are traumatized somewhere. So the first thing I'll do, I can approach you in a friendly way, and maybe I try to ask you. So in most cases, the asking of questions, I ask you, how was your childhood and that. Na sasa unapata mtu anafunguka pole pole. So you ask those questions that are direct into something, maybe to see, kuna wenye walipitia trauma and they think they were healed. Na kuna wengine walipitia trauma, but during that time, walifikiria, it's si kitu serious. Walifikiria si kitu serious. Na kumbe later on, it is affecting them in an indirect way that they may not be imagining. So the first thing is to have that awareness. Ifike mahali ambapo umekubali ama umeona kweli a certain situation that I went through at my childhood, hata saa hizi bado, it is affecting me. Yeah, so self-awareness is the first stage. And when you are aware, wakati uko aware ya kwamba mimi kitu fulani na fulani na fulani nilipitia a certain event. And awareness is that event ilipo happen, what emotions did you develop? Because the brain, trauma is usually in the brain. As much as it runs with like blood in our bodies much later, but it happens in the brain, yeah?
Okay.
And it will mainly happen at the front part of the brain. The front part of the brain. Yeah. So hii area ndio ina control vitu kama memory. So you see that is where the trauma is going to be stored.
Yes.
Yeah, hiyo ndio ina control concentration, learning, self-control. And that is why we are saying they don't know how to say yes or no, or they cannot give a strong no, because the self-control part was also affected. And everything, kila wakati a similar thing happens, inaamsha ile memory because it was stored at that frontal part. And the medics, they will always say that once a person is traumatized, there is a way that brain, the frontal part brain, haitakuwa damaged. Trauma will not damage your brain, but it is going to affect such that the brain might shrink. Ina shrink. And that is why unapata ya kwamba imefinya na ndio unaona huna concentration mzuri, una lack your self-control, ama self-management, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So when you are aware, once you get aware that I went through 1, 2, 3 things at my childhood, and it caused a scar in me. You see, the first awareness. The second awareness ni what emotions, how did I react or how did I respond to that event? What are some of the emotions that I developed? There are some who are so sad, na kumbe hii sadness inaamshangwa na ile memory ya nini? Ya the event that happened. Yeah. There are some who are angry, nimekuambia, anakuwa triggered so rahisi kukasirika, and it is because of that memory that was stored inside there. So ukishakuwa aware na hizo vitu mbili, unakuwa aware na the event, the traumatic event itself, na unakuwa aware na the second thing, that is unakuwa aware na the emotions ambazo hiyo trauma inileta kwa maisha yako, ama huwa inaamusha when you are triggered, it is easier for you to heal, because now we go to the second level, which is acceptance. Sasa umekubali kweli hii trauma inaniletea madhara and I need a change. Yeah.
Perfect. No, Vee, we coming almost close to the end of our part 1 of the traumas, But just before we come to the close of part 1, or rather the episode 1 of the traumas, I have this one last question. And this question is, are traumas irreversible? Now, if they're irreversible, how do they affect our decision making or the choices that we make in life?
So traumas cannot be exactly irreversible because
so ikisha happen,
it happened. That was an event, it happened.
So it's like this glass. Nikiangusha ipasuke, hata nishikanishe, that mark will forever be there.
But now what we try to work on is your emotional response, your response to that. That is the only thing that can change. But the event, it already happened.
Okay.
And there is nothing much you can do about that. If you witnessed maybe your parents, every time they had a domestic violence, you cannot, it happened.
It happened.
Yeah, but you can change the way you see it, or you can change your emotions. Instead of always feeling so sad or becoming violent and aggression because of what you had seen, you can choose to change. And that is why we are saying you have to heal. You cannot just change it. You have to give yourself some time to heal. You have to exercise what we call the self-compassion, where you love yourself, unajipenda sana, and you are ready to take care of yourself. And when we are talking about taking care of yourself, tunaongea about you take care of your mind, because that is kila factory yote ya mawazo na mafikira, it is in the mind. So you take good care of your mind such that you discourage any negativity, negative talks within you, or any other thing that can trigger the trauma, you discourage it. So self-compassion is very important when it comes to the healing process. Very important when it comes to the healing process. So when it comes to how trauma affects us later in our lives to make decisions, they do. zinatu affect sana sana sana. Like I have told, if you are scolded at your childhood level, kila wakati ulijaribu kupatiana ka decision, unaambiwa nyamaza, or you are ignored, that means that even
I think being ignored is what happens sometimes.
hata kukomeshwa, like nyamaza. It is true. Yes, so when such things happen, remember they were registered in your mind, and there will always be that talk in your mind always telling you, hiyo decision yako haina maana, hiyo decision yako, it has no value, it is not going to add value. So even when you grow as an adult, every time there is a discussion somewhere, or you need to make a decision that maybe even involves other people, kila wakati you might be carrying the right one, lakini ndani yako kuna kale katoko kanakwambia wewe, you can't. Who are you to talk?
Yes.
The people will not even believe you. You see? So it's going to affect you in that way. When it comes also to sexual abuse at your childhood level, pia hiyo unapata ya kwamba most of them, and especially from teenage upwards, watu wenye walikuwa sexually abused at their childhood.
Yes.
Na nimekwambia si kukuwa abused directly, mpaka ile kuona, aliona when these things were being done, ikamtraumatize. These things will always affect them in relationships much later. They don't know when to enter into a relationship, and they don't know when to come out of a relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. Some of them will even opt to keep off those relationships because they are remembering some of the things that they went through.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we're very grateful. By the way, hii ni kwanza tu tunaanza. And I think there is much more that we may not be able to tell you everything. But when we come the next time, or in the next episode of the same, the traumas. And you see, traumas haziko tu kwa watu wazima, kwa watoto peke yake. Zinaanza kwa watoto. Vee ametuambia hata in the middle age ziko, in the old age ziko. Wasi, don't miss out on the next one. Just to remind you, kama haukuanza na sisi, this thing or this talk, you're finding it live at Vee Motivation, Facebook and YouTube. Prestige TV, YouTube and Facebook. And Daniel Nganga, Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, thank you so much.